Love bringing Mark Mix on because we always have a great conversation. Mark Mix from the National Right to Work. And there's something that's going on when it comes to Medicaid and Medicare and all the fraud that's happening. Let's get Mark on. Mark, good morning. Welcome back to the show. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Brian. Can you transmit the beach picture to my computer? Can you do that? I guess I could tune in, but anyway, that sounded wonderful.
Oh, dude, let me tell you, it looks beautiful. I know exactly what I'm doing when the show is done. I was kind of not sure if I was going to do the beach, but now, yes, I'm doing the beach.
All right. Well, you'll have fun and relax there, but there's trouble across America, and it comes in the Medicaid and Medicare system. And it's a story, Brian, that I appreciate you covering this stuff. You usually do, but it's not many people know about it. But believe it or not, we've got labor unions that are in between Medicare providers, like health providers, home health care providers, and their patients getting a cut of the Medicaid money that goes to union dues. And this is just we hear about Minnesota and the corruption up there with the educational money and the COVID money and the feeding the children money and all that, and the Leering Center and all that. One of the things that slips by is a story like this, where you have organized labor unions getting in between and actually violating federal law. Federal statute says there can't be third parties in between a provider and a recipient of Medicare money, Medicaid or Medicare money. But yet union officials have gotten the privilege of doing this. And it started way back when with a governor that had great hair, Rod Blagojevich, if you remember him from Illinois.
He did have great hair.
Yeah, I hold him in contempt because I haven't followed his challenge, as they say, Brian. And so that's my initial reaction to him. Yeah. But what he did as governor was really bad. He signed an executive order letting the Service Employees International Union get in between the healthcare providers, the providers of healthcare, and the recipients of that aid to help them take care of some of the medical expenses instead of institutionalizing them. Which made sense. It reduces the cost, and mothers and fathers and aunts and uncles and grandmothers and are taking care of their own family members, and they're getting a little bit of help to do that. But in this case, Blagojevich turned that executive order into significant political contributions from the SEIU, helping him to get reelected. And so we found out about it. Others kind of had an inkling about it. We ended up litigating it, and we took a mom who was taking care of her own child, developmentally disabled child in her home, and another mom who was taking care of her daughter, who was in a wheelchair and paraplegic. And we took them to court, and of course we argued all the way from the district court through the appellate court, all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And these two moms got their day in court. And the U.S. Supreme Court, back in 2014, in a case called Harris v. Quinn was the governor that succeeded Blagojevich in Illinois, and said, no, you can't. It's against the First Amendment. It's constitutionally protected. You can't force people to be required to pay union fees and give this money over to the union to take care of their own family members in their own home. And then they didn't necessarily mention the federal statute that prohibits the third party entrance in here, but they didn't have to because it was so amazing that they were charging a mom union dues to take care of her own child. And so in the 2014 case that came down, we won it. What state legislatures did after that is they said, well, we can have people take the money, and 9 states have gotten a letter from Dr. Oz, who's the head of the Center for Medicaid Services, saying, look, we're hearing that this is happening to the tune of about $100 million a year to go to various unions that are involved. And we want an immediate audit of that to make sure that every single home health care provider has given you the permission to do this. And this is something that they have voluntarily agreed to. I think what we're going to find is that they haven't done that. And these are the states, California, New York, Illinois, New Jersey, Connecticut. I mean, you can go down the list of the states that are, where the unions have the most power, and you find this skimming, this literally Medicaid union due skimming program in place. And the good news was Trump stopped it back when his first term. We helped him with a rule that stopped it. Biden, of course, you won't be surprised, Brian, immediately re-implemented it with a little more enthusiasm. Yep. And then Trump hasn't done it away yet, but Dr. Oz is now on the job, and he's starting the process of kind of rolling this back again. We're probably going to be involved from a litigation standpoint somewhere down the road, but it's a problem that needs more attention. And again, thank you for bringing it to the attention of your listeners and others that are tuning in here.
We're at a point, Mark, that I think we actually, and maybe I need to put this like in the merch store, a scorecard, a fraud scorecard, so that people can actually pay attention and keep track of all of the fraud that we're going, because every time you turn around, there just seems to be more and more fraud. And it doesn't surprise me at all that the unions and Medicare and Medicaid and all this, it's so sad that we're at this point. I mean, the amount of corruption that is happening in this country.
Yeah. Brian, I don't know how voters are going to respond. I'm a taxpayer. You're a taxpayer. This is taxpayer money. It's government money, and the fact that it can be stolen like this, and obviously the headline stories from Minnesota, now the headline stories building in California about all kinds of government programs that people are ripping off. It just is ridiculous. You'd hope that voters would respond to this. And, Minnesota's got an open U.S. Senate seat this time. Their incumbent there has retired or is retiring. And if you're a candidate running in Minnesota, why don't you make this the central part of your campaign? Talking about we're not talking millions, Brian. We're talking billions, right? With a B. And for us, the common Mr. and Mrs. Joe America, that's a lot of money. For the government, it's not anymore. It's rounding errors, right, unfortunately. But it's literally billions of dollars that is going to folks that don't deserve it, don't need it. And the government programs we've learned during the first year of the Trump with the Doge and Elon Musk and all that there's a whole bunch of government waste and fraud. And if we could just take care of that, one would think that some of the fiscal insanity could return to a little bit of fiscal sanity, although government's too big anyway, but that's another issue.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever going to be any fiscal sanity in our government until we shrink it down a little bit. But how much more fraud do you think we're starting to see with unions? Because, I mean, obviously we're seeing this come about, but it kind of makes you wonder, what else are we seeing for fraud with these guys?
Well, there's been an interesting case in Kansas City with the Boilermakers Union. You talk about not only fraud, you add the word extortion and intimidation and coercion, and add those terms, and you've got a pretty good mix for a pretty good look fictional book, I would say. Yeah. But the president of the labor union there, the international president, has just been convicted and is going to go to jail with his Ukrainian girlfriend, who he bought a townhouse for over there in Ukraine, and traveled at the union member's dime to go back and forth. Gave her a job, an OSHA job for $120,000 a year. All of this has come out in court. It's just an amazing amount of fraud. But you know where that stems from, Brian, is the compulsion. When you get the privilege to force people to pay as a condition of working, as it relates to right to work, or, I mean, try not to pay your taxes and see what happens to you, whether it be your property taxes or your income taxes. They take your house. I mean, so this kind of force leads to coercion and corruption, and it leads to fraud, whether it be in the private sector or the public sector. We see it everywhere. And what was it? Who was was it Willie? Somebody, the bank robber, said, why do you rob banks? Well, that's where the money is. So why do you steal money from the government? Because that's where the money is. I mean, think about the programs out in Minnesota where you had dozens and dozens of child care centers in one building with no children present.
Yeah.
I mean, and they were all getting money off the dime of the taxpayer rolls. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And the only solution to that is is sunlight and transparency, and politicians who have the guts to stand up and fight it. I mean, it's more than a headline. It's more than a press release. It's a problem that has to be corrected. And Dr. Oz here with the Center for Medicaid Services is trying to take care of it and calling these states out that are doing it, saying, look, you have an August 6th deadline to give me a full report on how this system is working and why money is going to a third party that it shouldn't go to, because unless the person says it absolutely, I want it to go there. I want it to go there, as opposed to I'm taking it whether you would like it or not. There's a big difference there, and hopefully we'll get back to the point where this Medicaid money goes back to the intended statutory protections. It says the government gives it to an entity, that entity gives it to the provider, and there's nobody in the middle there. That makes the most sense, because once you put a middleman in there, then you get we got costs, we've got office expenses, we've got this, we got that. And the next thing you know, you've created a cottage industry on being a middleman on a government program. And that's kind of what was happening in Minnesota, and it's happening here. And it continues to happen here, unfortunately.
I'm going to be honest with you, Mark. It's getting to a point where it's just overwhelming. I mean, just to keep track of all of it and who's doing what. I mean, I guess the question is, how do we stop it from happening? I mean, what do we have to do to get this to just calm down a little bit and to address it and to I don't even know where to go with this. I mean, it's so frustrating.
Well, the fact that government is involved in everything in our daily lives now is probably the first, as you mentioned it. I mean, we've got to cut back the size and scope of government. That is virtually impossible because, like a drug dealer, you give out the first couple of samples on the street corner for free.
Yeah,
Brian, this stuff is going to make you happy. And then when you come back and I see that in your eyes, that glaze in your eyes and kind of the drool on the side of your mouth, knowing that you now need it and have to have it, well, you're going to pay me for it now, Brian. You're going to pay me for it now, and that's probably a bad metaphor, or bad analogy.
Not
but
really.
It's similar.
Yeah.
You push that stuff out there, you give it to people, they become dependent upon it, and then it becomes generational. And you look at Johnson's Great Society in the 1960s, and you see the creation of the Guns and Butter program. That all of a sudden butter has become a necessity for generations of Americans who have relied on it, and if it doesn't come to them, it's tragedy. But yet that dependence on government transfer payments, government payments, is something that it's hard to address. It's a politically difficult topic, and in politicians are not voting on what's good or bad for America. They're voting on how to get elected and reelected. And giving away free stuff, that's a pretty good campaign slogan.
Yeah, that it is. And I point this out throughout the show all the time. We have viewers around the world, and Mark, who lives over in the UK, he sees this stuff all the time, and he's always got some great points. He's like, all this transparent fraud is just the tip of the iceberg, and it really truly is. I mean, think about how deep this actually really truly goes.
Yeah, I don't want to think about how deep it truly goes, because that would be really discouraging and depressing. And having you get to end up on the beach today. I'm ending up in the office. So anyway, no, look, it is bad, and I think the reason, getting back to what is the primary rationale for it, is the size and scope of government, and government trying to be everything to everybody, and give a man a fish, he eats for the day. Teach a man to fish, he learns how to, take care of himself, right? I'm sorry to make it that simple, but these are simple tidbits of wisdom. That one's biblical, by the way, and we need to understand that. And as a culture, I don't think we do anymore. And we're seeing it happen in Europe. I mean, Mark over there is. Sometimes I think we're better off, or may not be much better off, but it sounds, from what I hear from Europe and certainly the United Kingdom, that we're doing a little better, but we're not far behind, and that's really unfortunate. And that trend is not going to stand. I mean, we're seeing the reform of it in South America and Central America. Some of those countries that have gone down the road of absolute socialism, absolute tyranny, are returning to basically individual freedom, and maybe the United States has that same course in front of it. And we've had fits and starts previously, and the idea is to remember that this is a grand experiment in self-government, and we, the people, if we complain about things, we need to look in the mirror and say, we are the people. Yep. You and I are the people. We got to do something about it. We got to be active. We got to be involved. We've got to try to understand it and be more involved in what's happening with our taxpayer money than we are with what's going on, in an all-star game or a home run derby. How about that?
Yeah, there you go. So we'll see what happens with all this. You guys are getting involved with these unions, and it just God, these unions just drive me crazy. I mean, at this point, I can't think of a legitimate reason for a union to be around. I mean, I really can't.
Yeah. Well, Brian, I would say, if people want to join together to amplify their voice, they can do that. But the idea of force and coercion and compulsion in a system like that, there's no place for that. And if you take that out, that changes the whole dynamic of organized labor. I mean, if you can force someone to pay you as a condition of you working, I mean, I don't have to care about whether I take care of you or not. I just get the money. It's a pretty good business model. And if you take the force and coercion out of it, then you have something that is truly voluntary, and people can decide whether or not to associate or join or pay dues or whatever. That changes the whole dynamic, and it makes organized labor what it was back in the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s, was voluntary institutions. I mean, Gompers, the founder of the American labor movement, said the workers of America adhere to voluntary institutions. If you compel them, you'll destroy the unions, and that's what's happened. Unions have used compulsion for the last 80, 90 years, and there's no surprise to anyone that the union density and the number of union members is decreasing, because the unions are not providing anything other than, hey, pay me or don't work. And that's not a very good business model. It's temporary at best. And we're going to fix that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you're doing that. And I know that you guys are very busy. So this is not the only topic that you guys are addressing and working on. What else is the National Right to Work on top of? Because it's actually been a little while since we've had you on. So there's got to be some updates of things that you've been doing.
Yeah, there is. There's lots of stuff. In fact, we've had a couple of items in Florida. We're helping some employees of Wells Fargo Bank basically get rid of unions down there. We had one, I think, close by to where you are in Florida recently. We've got that going on. We've got, obviously, the elections are coming up, and there's a lot of interest in that. I mean, we get to every 2 years, we get to decide what government's going to look like going forward. And so one of the things we do is we're surveying every candidate that's running for federal office on their positions vis-a-vis forced unionism. Do you believe a worker should be forced to pay union dues or fees to get or keep a job? Yes or no? And generally the people that are against us don't answer that question, but the people that do, that support us, answer yes. And we want to make sure that Americans understand, again, our job as citizens of the United States is to be informed and be educated about where these candidates that we're going to loan our power to in this constitutional republic, where they stand on issues that are important to us. And so getting that information before they get elected is really important, because after they're elected, Brian, the pressure comes off, right?
Yeah.
They're safe.
Yeah, it really does.
Period of time.
So, Mark, where can people find that particular information? Because I know, like right here, in Congressional District number 2 here in Florida, where we are, there's a big election going on. We got 8 Republican candidates, 4 Democrat candidates. Where can people go to see that type of information on their local candidates? To see?
They can find that on our committee's website, nrtwc.org, nrtwc.org. We may not have that posted up there yet, but that information will be up there of where your candidate stands on the issues. And, if you join us, you'll get regular mailings about where the candidates stand and what issues we're working on. And that's the National Right to Work Committee. I mean, you can find us on that internet site, same thing. But that information will be up there, and we basically lay it out for every single candidate across the country, whether it be a U.S. Senate race or a U.S. House race or a governor's race or a state legislative race. And in most states we do. In some states we don't do the state legislature unless we need to. But that information is available. They just have to call the committee. You can find that information on the website, and we can give you the answers to where your candidates stand on the issue. It's really important to know.
Yeah, it really is. And there's so many issues out there, and to get it all cracked down is tough. Mark, I got to ask you this, because I always dip my toes into this one every single time, just because at this point it's just a morbid curiosity. But the Starbucks union fight, how's that going?
Well, I think they just announced that they've unionized they've won a union election at the 700th unit of Starbucks. This has been going on since 2022, I guess they started. So we're 4 years into it. The number of Starbucks units, I think, is over 17,000 in America. The unions keep filing unfair labor practice charges against Starbucks. Starbucks continues to try to run their company. We still have a bunch of decertification elections where workers are trying to get out of the union that they voted in maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and the National Labor Relations Board will not let them out, and not even let them have a vote, Brian. So we're still working on that. It hasn't made a whole lot of news other than Starbucks has been charged with unfair labor practice charges during the Biden administration. Mm-hmm. There's still, I don't know how many cases have been filed against Starbucks for being the worst employer in America. And Brian, you and I remember back, maybe 10 years ago, they were the best employer in America. They were the greatest place to work. Yeah. You could paint your hair, you could do whatever you wanted. You could, you got help for college, and you got insurance benefits, and you got decent pay. But now, I mean, they're the worst employer anywhere in the world, apparently.
Well, yeah, because they're doing things like, hey, these are the type of pants we want you to wear, and this is the shirt you want to wear. I mean, the horror that it has got to be to work at a Starbucks being told, hey, here's your uniform. I mean, I cry every night for them. Knowing how
well, you got better coffee anyway, don't you, Brian? You got better coffee anyway.
I do. Knock It Off coffee is much better, and not to mention, I mean, at this point, there's I don't know if it's like this up in D.C. and Virginia where you are, but here in Bay County, there is every coffee chain on the planet is not only popping up, but they're popping up like bunnies just finished doing their thing. It's like on the main road that goes down through Lynn Haven into Panama City. Let me start here. Where is it? There's one. It started with the 7 Brew, and then like That I think you can get some at coffee at Sonic too, but it's probably not very good. So you got the 7 Brew, Dunkin' Donuts, and then there's what is the other one? There's the Starbucks, obviously, but then it's like as you're going down, there's more and more, and then they're repeating in case you missed the first one. I'm just like. Every time I see a lot getting cleared, I'm like, oh, here comes another coffee shop. So I just say screw it, and I order my coffee from knockitoff.coffee, and I make my stuff at home and drink it there. Every once in a great while, I will get a Starbucks, though. I will admit that, but it's the foo-foo things. But hey, yeah, you know. So,
all
Mark,
right, Brian, listen, thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it. It's good to talk with you, and thanks for bringing this stuff up and following these issues.
Absolutely. Mark from the National Right to Work, always a great pleasure chatting with you, and we'll look forward to chatting with you again on some updates on this.
All right, Brian. Thank you.
All right, take care, Mark. Mark Mix from the National Right to Work. Again, you can go check them out on their website. It is it's a lot of stuff that they're doing.